Up next on Tech News Weekly, it's me and Mikah Sargent. We have a first look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. It is a beast of a phone, and we go hands-on with that. Also, Lory Gil from iMore walks us through the latest developments in the story of Epic Games versus Apple. We've got Corbin Davenport from Android Police, who talks a little bit about his experience with the Linux-based PinePhone. Netflix has a surprise for us watchers, and Oculus is going to require a Facebook login in order to use its hardware. That and more next on Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 147, recorded Thursday, August 20th, 2020.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Hiring is challenging, especially with everything else you have to consider today. But there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, it's fast, and it's smart. That place is ZipRecruiter. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
And by Barracuda. Did you know that 91% of all cyber attacks start with an email? Well, to uncover the threats hiding in your Office 365 account, get a secure and free email threat scan at barracuda.com/TNW.
And by Monday.com. Monday.com is a flexible platform to manage any team, project, or workflow online. Collaborate, plan, and track everything your team is working on wherever you are. To start your free 14-day trial, go to monday.com/twit. Hello and welcome back to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news, even if we're the ones making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent, and that was a hint at our first segment.
I'm Jason Howell. I thought that was a hint at like the pre-show shenanigans where it seemed like we were breaking the internet.
Oh, that also
sometimes
works.
Feels like the case.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. I don't know how much news we're breaking right now, but we'll go ahead and lean into it and say, breaking news, I just got the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, that is a mouthful.
Yeah, it really is. And
is
it's
it also a handful?
Yeah. Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
Check it out. You got it. You're right there with me. Yeah. So this is the Note 20 Ultra. I have it displayed next to the Pixel 4a, which is literally what I pulled my SIM card out of last night and popped it into the Note 20 Ultra. On the right of it is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. So the S20 Ultra came out, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and the Note 20 Ultra shares a lot with it, not the least of which is the ginormous size, as you can see, and the crazy large camera bump area. Looks like my camera is changing iris. I apologize about that. So I just got the S20 Ultra. I'm going to be putting it through its paces, but I thought I'd just kind of show it off real quick here and give some initial impressions. Are you like how familiar are you with kind of the Note series that has been announced, or even just the Note in general? Does the idea of a stylus or an S Pen appeal to you at all, Mikah?
I think styli are cool. I think being in the Apple camp, you don't get that in a phone. The closest that you get is the Apple Pencil that comes with the Apple iPad. And I think styli are very cool. What I find interesting are those air actions that actually just popped up there. The way that you can kind of remote control your device using the little magic wand that is the stylus I'm curious, are we looking at improvements with this? Is this just iteration on what already exists? Like what new things have come to this? Is it more pressure sensitive? Is it the same? Are there new air actions? Tell me all about the stylus. Why else call it the Note unless it is about the fact that you can use a stylus with it and, make notes and things like that?
Absolutely. And every year, they're adding to the capabilities, although it really does feel like, and I'm going to spend time, really playing around with the Note over the course of the next week and beyond. But it really does feel like in some ways, Samsung has kind of peaked with the amount of innovation that they can bring to their premium flagships, right? This phone is $1,449. This version of the phone is $1,449. It starts at $1,299. And when you're talking about the S Pen, that is the real big kind of identifier or kind of the thing that makes this phone unique. And what you get here that you don't get even in the Note 20 non-Ultra version is you get an improved latency on the input through the S Pen. So it's reduced down to 9 milliseconds. So when your pen touches the screen, you draw, and you're drawing, basically that line is faster, is more up to speed with where your pen actually sits. And I'm sure it's the kind of thing that like artists or people who really rely on the S Pen are going to notice the difference. I mean, I can tell you, like, just by scribbling on it and everything, it more and more now versus even a couple of years ago, it feels like you're writing on a very slick piece of paper. It's it really catches all the subtleties. If I really try and press lightly, I think I would prefer to have a much thinner line, but it's pretty darn thin. You can hardly even see it on the overhead shot that I have right here. So I think ultimately what Samsung is constantly working on is getting the S Pen to a point to where it's somewhat indecipherable to what humans who have been writing forever are used to, and they're getting closer. I think they're doing a great job. I just have a hard time relying on the S Pen. I'm so used to all the other ways that I use my smartphone that I never think to pull out the S Pen when I need to take a note or I need to write your name on a screen. I just type it instead.
What else sets this apart from the competition? Well, what is it about this phone, if we're not talking S Pen, that would make you want to get this phone instead of some other phone that's in the Android lineup?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're not talking S Pen, I think it becomes kind of harder to decipher what differentiates it, even from the S20 Ultra, right? They're both really big phones with, that are stylized with glass front and back, although the Note 20 Ultra has this kind of shaded, faded, non-fingerprint picking up, and that's all scientific terms,
yes.
Glass back. They both have this giant protruding camera array, which is somewhat similar, although is similar on a couple of the lenses and a little bit different in other cases. Overall, the camera system has a laser autofocus now. It has a 5x optical zoom, which I have to say, and just this morning I was just kind of playing around with it a little bit, and things look really nice out of that. I love having a nice sharp optical zoom instead of any digital zoom in there, and so they have that going on in here. For whatever it's worth, I will say the S20 Ultra that I have on the right side here, I've been using this to shoot all of my outdoor B-roll for all of my reviews over the past couple of months. So if you've seen any of my reviews and the footage really looks like a DSLR, it's coming from this S20 Ultra. And so I'm really curious to do the same thing with the Note 20 Ultra. I've come to really rely on the video capabilities of the S20 Ultra, and I think I'm going to get similar, if not maybe a little bit better, out of the Note 20 Ultra, but that remains to be seen. I'm going to have to play around with it. Samsung really wants these devices to kind of prove themselves as far as like why they cost that much. And that's one way that they're doing it. They're saying this is a really good kind of platform for creators, for people who want to create. You can, shoot really great video. You can take really good photos. And then in the case of the Note 20 and the Note series in general, artists have really jumped on board. I am not an artist, so I can't show you any of my masterpieces. But so anyways, I'm curious to spend some time with it. It is a very big difference from the Pixel 4a, which has been my daily driver for the last couple of weeks now. Not just size, but just the fact that like the 4a is a $350 phone. The Note 20 Ultra is on the opposite end of that spectrum. At this model with 512 gigs of storage and 12 gigs of RAM is $1,449. So it's strange to pop my SIM from one and go into the other. You know what I mean? It's like walking in two completely different worlds. And I think the bigger question will be, as I play around with this, is right now the right time for a device like this? the story for the last however many years has been all about smartphones in the premium range and pushing the boundaries and everything like that. But the world's very different right now, and right now feels more like a Pixel 4a time in this world than a Note 20 Ultra $1,500 almost phone. So, can it prove itself in that category and prove to people that, hey, I know it's expensive, but you want one anyways, and you're going to pay for it. And I'm not so certain that it's going to prove itself in that direction the way it has in the past.
It's a beautiful, beautiful device. Absolutely. But
it is. It's kind of a signature piece, right? Like the color that when you have it in your hand, it feels premium. It feels expensive. This is a phone that you really want to show people.
It's super tall. Now,
it is.
Maybe you mentioned this, but I missed it. What's the unlock method? How do we get into the device?
Well, they have a couple of different methods, but what I'm relying on is the in-display fingerprint sensor. Gotcha. And it works. It worked perfectly that time. It's been all right for me. It's just in-display fingerprint sensors are just not my cup of tea. Over time, I've played with plenty of devices that have it now, and I just can't say that I prefer it over the actual physical fingerprint sensor that you get on the back, as is the case with the Pixel 4a. It's tactile. You know exactly where it is. I don't know. I just find them to be a little less responsive, a little less accurate when they're in display. Samsung has I'm blanking on the difference here as far as the optical fingerprint sensor is on other phones. Samsung has the different technology, which I'm completely blanking on suddenly, but it's supposed to be better. And my experience has been that it's actually not. It's maybe it's more secure, but it doesn't work all the time. And so that's kind of a bummer, but
gotcha.
But yeah. So I'm going to be doing a full review of the Note 20 Ultra on Hands-On Tech. Yes, ultrasonic. Thank you, Scooter X in chat room. It's an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. I'm going to be doing a full review. So basically the screen
is screaming at you when you put your fingerprint on it. And if the screams come back as they're supposed to, then it says, okay, that's you.
Yeah, right. But I just find it to be inaccurate at times, like on a day-to-day basis. Just pulling out the phone and trying to use it. Sometimes I'm battling the fingerprint sensor, and then I end up having to put in the PIN because I tried it too many times. It didn't work, and it deactivates it. So anyways, full review coming of the Note 20 Ultra on Hands-On Tech, not next week, but the week after. So I'm going to have a full week to really lean into this device, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'll tell you everything that I think about this device when that review comes out in a couple of weeks.
Well, looking forward to that. We, of course, coming up are going to talk about, that whole Epic Games versus Apple versus all the other companies. How's that going? Well, we've got your answers there. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. As an employer, you've got a lot on your plate. Running your business, ensuring workplace safety, and a whole heck of a lot more. So leave your hiring to the one place that makes finding qualified candidates fast and easy at ZipRecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job sites, but it doesn't stop there. With its powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. ZipRecruiter makes the entire hiring process efficient and effective with features like screening questions to filter candidates and all-in-one dashboard where you can review and rate your candidates. Co-founder Gretchen Hebner of Codable found that hiring is challenging, as you might expect, and she needed to hire a game artist to take her education tech company to the next level. Gretchen turned to ZipRecruiter and was impressed with how quickly she found qualified candidates. In less than 2 weeks, Gretchen had found her new game artist thanks to ZipRecruiter. With results like that, it's no wonder that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate within the first day. Yeah, within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TNW. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Thank you so much to ZipRecruiter for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. And now it is time. I am pleased to say that, we talked a little bit about Epic Games and Apple last week. Then we had the breaking news thing where Apple pulled Epic Games. What is it called now? I can't even think of the name. Fortnite from the App Store. And that kind of happened live. And so we thought we'd check back in with what's going on. And who better to talk about that than the managing editor of iMore, Lory Gil. Hello, Lory.
Hello, Lory.
Hi, Mikah. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. It's going well. So happy to have you on today. So, there's been a lot that has happened since the day that Epic and Apple kind of had their blowout. But I think it would be good to kind of give a basic overview of this situation. So kind of what led up to where we are now. If you could kind of tell our listeners, in case they missed last week's episode or they haven't been caught up, someone's coming in new to this whole Epic Games versus Apple versus Google and all these other people. What's going on?
So exactly a week ago, it was last Thursday, Epic launched a new campaign in their Fortnite, their most popular game, allowing people to purchase V-Bucks at a discounted price, 20% off. And the option to buy these bucks only came through a direct purchase, which goes against Apple's App Store guidelines. Apple's guidelines require that if you are going to offer in-app purchases or subscriptions, that they need to happen within the app, not by leaving the app and going to a different site or payment option. So Fortnite did this with intention because, of course, Apple pulled the Fortnite app from the App Store within, I would say, 2 or 3 hours after Fortnite launched this campaign. So that was a given. We all knew that was going to happen. But what happened next is what was kind of an incredible whirlwind of a day, honestly. We went from, Apple pulls Fortnite to Fortnite announces that it's going to show a movie inside of its battle or party royale, which is like sort of an in-game social gathering space. And they, teased it, and it was clearly a parody of Apple's 1984 Macintosh commercial. And even the teaser of it made us all very aware that, okay, Apple is actually, Epic Games they're on a path. They knew this was coming and they're ready for this. So they did that. And then within 10 minutes of the announcement, this was prior to the actual launch of the mini movie, they also announced that they were filing a lawsuit against Apple. Google also, within this same time frame, sometime around the same time that Apple pulled it from the App Store, Google did the same thing for the same reasons. They have their own in-app policy purchase. So, there's Apple and Google are both. So basically right now, if you're brand new to Fortnite, you've never played it before, you've never downloaded it on your device before, you don't get to play Fortnite on a phone at all because it's not available in the Google Play Store you can sideload it on Google, but from the Google Play Store, you can't download it from there or from the iOS App Store. So then they announced that they were suing Apple for a lot of things, but it basically comes down to what they are claiming to be an antitrust situation. Apple monopolizing the developer community, forcing them to require payments through an in-app purchase, which Apple gets a cut of, not allowing them to have payments be made outside of the App Store, not allowing customers to download apps or games outside of the App Store. So this is their general lawsuit against Apple. Then they actually released the actual video. So we got to see the full thing. And yes, of course, it was an absolute play on sort of treating Apple as the totalitarian government system that they once considered themselves to be rebelling against. So it was kind of a funny little play for them. So this was clearly all planned, probably a year in the making,
Right?
at least a few months in the making, and that all happened on one day. And then let's see if I can remember what goes next. Spotify released a statement. They supported this. Epic Games also on their blog announced that they were trying to create a group of app developers, a coalition, if you will, that agree with this. So Epic Games is kind of treating themselves as like, we are, the leaders of this rebel group of ragtag developers who just want our freedom from the tyranny of the App Store. That's kind of their rhetoric about it. And then Apple said that it was going to, so this is the most recent information, which just came up 2 days ago, I believe, on the 18th, that Apple, they told Epic Games that they are pulling their developer certification. So they are actually, in essence, banning not the game itself, but the company from Apple, from iOS. So that is huge, because that means that all games that are made with the Unreal Engine, that is part of Epic Games company, they don't get to continue to update their games with new versions of the Unreal Engine, because Epic Games cannot get those signed for iOS. So that really does put like a huge burden on the entire gaming industry that is supported by Epic Games or by the Unreal Engine. So that was huge. So because of that, then Epic Games filed a second lawsuit requesting a restraining order. It's a funny wording, but it actually is a restraining order to stop Apple from going through with this removal of Epic Games' certification as an Apple developer, because that goes into effect on the 28th of August. So that's not a lot of time for Epic Games to do what they need to do, no matter what. That's a very short period of time to make make things happen between Apple and Epic, because Epic doesn't want to step down from this, and Apple is really forcing their hand by saying you step down or you lose everything. So that's about where we're at now. There's been little bits of statements and things like that here and there that have come out, but that's pretty much where we're sitting right now. Is as of the 28th of August, Epic Games will lose its developer certification unless they fix what they did wrong with the Fortnite game and resubmit it to the App Store.
So yeah, we've got a multi-pronged kind of issue here. I did a quick Google search, Unreal Engine games on iOS, and Google has a handy little sort of carousel at the top that shows some of the games that are available. There's also a Wikipedia article that shows the list of Unreal Engine games that are available on different platforms. And there are quite a few, including Infinity Blade, which is a game that, correct me if I'm wrong, Lory, has been demoed on stage at different Apple developer conferences or Apple announcements in the past to kind of show off the processors in certain iOS devices. So it's a little strange to see, and maybe concerning to see that, all of these games could potentially be banned from the App Store due to this issue. One of the things
let me just real quick clarify on that. These games will not be banned. It just means that the Unreal Engine that they use to develop and update their games, they will no longer be able to get the updates that Unreal Engine gets. So Epic Games will continue to develop and improve the Unreal Engine. Those improvements will not be able to be passed on to these game developers. They'll be sort of stagnant in whatever version they're stuck with before the poll. So that you can still play the games. The game companies that use Unreal Engine, they'll be able to continue to develop their own games, but they won't be able to use the Unreal Engine, the new developments of the Unreal Engine as they come out. So they basically would have to switch to a different game development source, which is a royal pain for any developer to have to do something like that.
Or maybe it's a royale pain. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good one. I like that.
Thank you. So let me ask you this then. I saw I think it was, going around on Twitter. It may have been somewhere else, but the conversation surrounded Epic Games complaining about the 30% cut from iOS, and then also the percentage that Google takes as well. But that casts aside, or ignores rather, the percentage cut that people like Microsoft take if they sell stuff on the Xbox, or that the PlayStation takes if it's sold on the PlayStation device. Do we know any information about that? Like, is that the case, that any app store that Epic chooses to be a part of, regardless of whether it's one of these smartphone platforms or it's a console gaming platform, it sounds like there's still, some amount of money that the company that owns the platform or the console makes whenever a sale is made.
Yeah, so I believe that Epic Games is actually laying claim that they do not have to pay as much of a fee by going to the other. You know what? Actually, you know what it is? Sorry, I'm trying to remember all of the things that have been said up to now. So Tim Sweeney is actually he actually said that you can make purchases for items for your Fortnite game outside of the Microsoft or PlayStation stores. So the option to in-app purchase or out-app purchase is there. So what they want in this case with Fortnite is they want people to be able to go outside of the App Store to make their purchase. And frankly, I think that this is a reasonable request. I think most people, the average person, they're going to play a game and they're going to just use an in-app purchase, right? They're not going to want to jump through hoops and exit out of the game to go make a purchase somewhere else. They want to stay within the App Store. I think there's danger involved, and I think this is where things could go wrong, is that the price shouldn't be different. So for Fortnite, not only did they directed people outside of the App Store, outside of the game for their purchases, they gave a discount to people who were getting that package outside. So if they said you can get it for $7.99 inside this app using Apple's in-app purchase, or you can get it for $7.99 going outside through our direct payment, I think that's very fair. And I think there are going to be people who want to support these game developers and who will go outside of the in-app purchase program in order to help the companies. But Apple will still make their 30% that they want to hold on to for a lot of people. So I think both people can benefit from this situation. That's an opinion there. Right. So I guess then my last question for you would be kind of what should we be looking to next? What do we think maybe our next steps? Where are the companies right now? Kind of where are some of the places that this could go as we have these companies both sort of lobbing things back and forth at each other, trying to get this all figured out? Yeah, so my prediction is that Epic Games is going to give in to Apple's demands. They will pull their direct payment from the app, from their internal app, resubmit it to Apple, and everything will go back to normal, except that Epic Games will then remind everybody that Apple is a tyrannical monopoly who is oppressing developers. And then we're going to see a 5-year fight over Epic's desire to topple Apple's hold. I think that's where we're headed. I think they're going to give in, and we will see Fortnite back in the App Store within the week. But then that lets them look real good and say, see everybody, see what Apple did, see what they're doing to us. And then we're going to see a lot of lawsuits that will follow up with that. And that it'll be, little bits here and there for the next year or two. There'll be a huge win for one side a year or two from now, but then it'll be contested and then it'll go back to court. And then I think it'll take about 5 years for this to finally flush itself out completely and be either on Epic's side or Apple's side in the end.
Interesting. Lory Gil, I want to thank you so much for being here to provide us with an update on this epic battle with Apple and other developers out there. If folks want to follow you online, where do they go to do so?
You can tweet me at Appaholic, APPAH. I messed that up. APPAHOLIK on the App Store. On Twitter. I'm messing that one up real good. There we go. APPAHOLIK on Twitter. Or you can email me if you want to have a more intimate conversation with me. I actually really appreciate getting emails from people. Lory@imore.com. And obviously, you can go to iMore to check out all the things that we cover for Epic Games.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you want more of Lory each and every week, you can also go and check out MacBreak Weekly and subscribe to the show here on TWiT. We do appreciate having you there to talk about all the awesome things happening in the Apple space. All righty. We will catch you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lory. All right. Up next, a phone that you may or may not have heard of. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't. The PinePhone. It runs Linux and it's armed with dip switches. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Very interesting piece of hardware. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Barracuda. Barracuda is the provider of cloud-enabled enterprise-grade security solutions that protect email, networks, data, and applications. Suddenly you have dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of employees working remotely. Each one of them are getting tons of email every day. And that, of course, makes them vulnerable. 91% of all cyber attacks start in an email. Spear phishing, ransomware, account takeover, conversation hijacking. Multiply that by how many employees times how many emails, and one click, just one single click on the wrong email can cost you money, cost you customers and your reputation. Well, Barracuda researchers have seen a steady increase in the number of coronavirus-related spear phishing attacks, no surprise, since January. And they've observed a recent spike of 667% in this type of attack since the end of February. Get the protection you need for your company with Barracuda Total Email Protection. It's a suite that includes all-in-one email security, backup, and archiving. You get AI-based protection from spear phishing, account takeover, and business email compromise. An automated incident response that gives you options to quickly and efficiently address attacks. You also get security awareness training to educate your workforce so your employees can be the first line of defense against attacks. And I mean, if you've been in the business long enough, you've seen plenty of attacks, plenty of email threats. An email comes through, you see that link, you trust it, you click it, and sometimes you click it and you realize, like, the second you click it, like, I've totally been there. The second I click it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Where was my thinking here on this one? That's why you need a company like Barracuda in your court so that they can be that voice to double check and to protect you if you happen to go down that road. Right now, there are new attacks impersonating organizations like the World Health Organization. Attackers utilize domain spoofing and promise information relating to the coronavirus in an attempt to trick users into a phishing scam. It's very easy to do. Play on people's fears, right? Ensure the safety and security of your business with Barracuda. To uncover the threats hiding in your inbox, get a secure, free email threat scan of your Office 365 account risk-free at barracuda.com/TNW. That's barracuda.com/TNW. Barracuda is your journey secured. That's what we all need right now, and we thank Barracuda for their support. All right, so this caught my eye. I love, it's no surprise probably to some of you, but I love smartphones. I revel in them, and I'm always looking for smartphones that do things a little differently. Of course, earlier in the show, talked about the Note 20 Ultra, and that's a very unique phone in its own right. But then there's phones like what we're going to talk about now. And joining us to talk about the PinePhone is Corbin Davenport from Android Police. Welcome to the show, Corbin.
Hey, Jason. Good to be here.
Hey. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a very long time, so I'm happy you could take some time to join us today. So let's talk a little bit about this PinePhone, because you actually happen to have one. This is not an Android phone. This is a device that runs Linux, essentially. So I guess let's start with, based on your experience with the PinePhone, you have said in your article that it's the most interesting smartphone that you've tried in years. Share your take on it, who it's for. Why do you think that?
Yeah, so the PinePhone is really unique because it's more like a PC in your pocket than most smartphones we see. It's fully open, just like a regular PC. You can install whatever operating system you want on it. I have it right here. It's a very interesting phone. I believe right now there are 17 different operating systems being developed for it. Wow. Some of those are versions of Linux that are already on desktop platforms, and some of them are software more like what you would see from smartphone operating systems. And there's even a port of Android that kind of works, but yeah. So there's a lot of different software for it, but basically this is for the kind of crowd who's always frustrated at the lack of openness on modern smartphones. A lot of phones, you can't unlock the bootloader. You can't, rooting Android phones is more difficult now than it used to be. The same with jailbreaking iPhones. So this is really made by and for that crowd of people who want full control over their device, even if it means maybe they don't get the same premium experience that you'd get from a iPhone or a Pixel or whatever.
Now, we missed it when you held up the device. Can you hold it up real quick? I want to get kind of a sense of the design, because in the smartphone world, and I'm sure you would agree, I'm sure you would agree, all these phones at a certain point seem to blend together. Is it instructive to compare it to an Android device? Like, I realize it's not running Android, but in terms of hardware, in terms of the software experience of what you've encountered, like, is that, that feels like the most direct comparison, but like, how do they compare?
Yeah, it's hardware wise, it's very close to like a low end Android phone. So it's got 2 gigs of RAM. It has a pretty big IPS touchscreen on it. It's got USB Type-C. It's got a headphone jack. So score one for the PinePhone over every other flagship phone now. But the really cool design bits are actually inside the phone. So if I take the back off, it has a replaceable battery, which I haven't seen one of these in a long time. I forgot what it looked like. And it also has, I don't know if the webcam will pick it up, but it has, maybe.
There you go.
It has little, if I can see my finger, little dip switches right here. So you can actually physically turn off the Wi-Fi and the modem and all those other things. So if you're, you really don't want someone to be looking through your front webcam, you don't need to put a sticker over it. You can just flip it off. So it is genuinely cool. And like even there's the company who made this Pine64, they have a giant wiki page about the hardware for this phone. And I was impressed by like just how detailed and like how much attention was given to some of these things. Like, most companies, you don't know what batteries they're putting in the phone or like what the hardware is like. But, with this phone, they even try to make it so it's repairable by anyone, not just them. So like even the battery is based on some Samsung phone. So you can buy replacement batteries from a ton of different companies. So it's really cool the way they built this phone. But yeah, it does feel more like a cheap Android phone.
Yeah.
But I know there are even, I saw some discussion on on Pine64's Twitter where they're talking about making different backs that do more features, kind of like Moto mods, because there are pin connectors on the back for data and power. So I saw there's a couple people working on like a replacement back that adds like a Nokia N95 keyboard, like a slide out keyboard to it. There's some people messing around with adding a gamepad. So it's really cool.
Okay, and that just kind of brings to mind that, coupled with the fact that it's running Linux and not like a made for mobile operating system like Android. That just kind of brings to mind the days of old, and I'm sure some people, well, I know some people definitely still dabble in this, of creating a computer system from scratch, or expanding on their computer system. We haven't seen a whole lot of that in the mobile space. You mentioned Moto mods, and the kind of the modular capability of certain phones, none of those have really taken off. But then, maybe they haven't taken off because that idea isn't necessarily made for the mainstream. This really feels like it's outside of the mainstream, but great for people who love to kind of who know exactly what they want and aren't afraid to kind of get their hands dirty and build on those accessories to tap into that dip switch and everything. So I could see a lot of potential there. One thing I thought was funny or interesting about the dip switches, so these are kill switches, and they kill certain the functionality, like they literally deactivate the functionality of certain aspects of the device. And all of them made sense except for the headphone. Why would someone want to kill the headphone? Like, I couldn't quite figure that out. Is that just that they had a part that was this many dip switches and they had to pick a component? I was like, oh, I guess it's got to be the headphone jack. I don't understand why you would need to kill the headphone jack for security purposes.
I briefly read the wiki for that part. It sounded like when you switch off the headphone jack, it changes to like a different data mode. So again, it kind of goes back to like what you would do with the pogo pens on the back. Like there's more hardware customization you could do with that. Like like Square had that card reader for phones that plugged into the headphone jack ages ago. Right. So that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a little bit more sense. So then it really seems to a certain degree the way it is right now, it's meant a little bit more for the security minded. Did you find yourself in like having the capability of flipping a switch and turning off your camera? Is this something that you've ever wanted? Like, I don't know that I've ever necessarily needed something like that, but I'm also not going to like hacker conferences and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I could see an audience there maybe. What do you think?
Definitely not switching off like the modem and that kind of stuff, because like I need a phone to be a phone.
Yes,
but I could definitely see having a hardware switch for the front camera would be really cool. Even though Android and iPhone are pretty good now about letting you know when apps are using that, just like the idea, like even if my phone is irreparably compromised, no one will see what's in my front camera. Like that's cool. That's why a lot of people put stickers on their webcams, even though again Windows and Mac are good about that now. But I mean, like, there's definitely cases where that's valuable, especially, again, this is for the crowd that really wants full total control and doesn't, a lot of them don't trust Android and iOS and so on. Like there's been cases where applications monitor the accelerometer of the device, like when you're typing on it, you know how your phone maybe tilts a little bit. There are studies that have showed where some applications can use the accelerometer, which isn't restricted in any way, to sort of guess what you're typing. So there's cases like that where I could see the use in some cases if you're just like, I really don't want anything touching my data. I could see that.
Yeah. Someone in chat also pointed out another good possible use for this is participating in protests. If you want to be certain that you are, untracked or whatever, this would be maybe a better phone to pick than just the phone that you're carrying around on your daily, as your daily driver. What about the app situation? Because sorry,
maybe not for protest specifically, because most of the OSs don't have camera working yet.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go. What about the app situation? Because I mean, obviously, you're not running Android apps on here. Is there an app store for some of these Linux builds, or how do you go about that?
Well, there is one Android port. I did try it out. It barely works because it hasn't been in development that long, but that does have the F-Droid, and I'm sure you could put the Play Store on it and such.
Got it.
The app situation is it depends on what OS you try. The one I bought is the UbiPorts edition, so it came with Ubuntu Touch, which has its own app ecosystem and its own app library. There's not a lot of development going on for that because Ubuntu Touch stopped being developed by Canonical a couple of years ago when they couldn't get anyone to make phones with the OS. So now it's just a handful of people making apps for that. Some of the other ones I tried, the one I've used the most is Mobian, which is based on Debian Linux, and it can actually run full desktop applications. So like the same mail app I use on my desktop is on the phone. And there's
how does that scale? How does that scale when you do something like that to the small display?
So some of the apps are just like they're just like the desktop app on the phone, so the window's squished down and it's really hard to use. There's another company who made a Linux phone called Librem. They've been working with software developers to make their apps resize in the same way that like websites resize based on the screen size. So more apps than I was expecting are working on the phone with big buttons and designed for touchscreens. So that was probably the most surprising part. I wasn't expecting that many apps to work yet. But yeah, like if you want, you can just install whatever will work on a Raspberry Pi. So I tried installing LibreOffice and I could open a Word doc on my phone. It was very hard to use, but I could do it. I tried installing OBS, but it complained that it couldn't find a graphics card, so that didn't work.
I love it. Oh, I love all the kind of exploration that you could do with a device like this and make some cool discoveries. Linux on a smartphone, like how do you feel about kind of the Linux-based approach on your handset, considering kind of your background in Android and everything?
I'm definitely a fan of it. I use Linux on my desktop and laptop most of the time. So it's cool to have some like the same basic software on everything. And of course, Linux is more open and there's less of that feeling like I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes in my phone. But it is extremely early for Linux on phones. Pine64 released this phone basically targeted mostly at developers who are going to work on the OSs and make this working. And there's been a very fast progress in making this a usable phone. Like 4 months ago, basically nothing worked. And now, like when I try most operating systems, really it's just the camera that doesn't work right. Like Wi-Fi works, Bluetooth works, the modem works. I was shocked when I bought this phone and put it in and it immediately got 4G on AT&T. So it's getting there. This is still not something that most people could use as a main phone. This is still one of those kind of like Linux on the desktop where like you're sacrificing a little bit to get that ease of mind and privacy and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And not to mention, I don't even know if we even mentioned the price. This is not an expensive phone, $150 to $200, right? It's pretty low cost entry. So to that end, you can probably forgive it for any of the flaws that you might come up with initially. This is a phone that maybe has a very specific kind of use case for it, and I'm sure people can use their imagination as far as what that might be. But $150 to $200 just right out of the gate, not bad for a phone that you can kind of play around with and really kind of make your own, depending on how much knowledge you have about what happens on the back end and stuff. Do you think Android and iOS could learn something from this device based on your time with it?
I mean, like I said, Android and iOS are pretty good now about having software limitations in place where an app can't go completely crazy by looking at everything you're doing and so on. I did note in one of the articles about this that iOS will turn your Bluetooth back on if you leave it off for a while. I think Android does something similar, maybe not with Bluetooth, but with Wi-Fi. So there's definitely some things in those operating systems that sort of treat you as you don't know what you're doing with your computer. We need to, help step in. And the PinePhone is the polar opposite. It's you're in full, for better or worse, you're in full control of your smartphone.
Right. I love it. That could be their tagline. For better or worse, you're in full control. Love it. Corbin, thank you so much for hopping on with us and sharing your kind of insight on your time with the PinePhone. Corbin Davenport, of course, writes for Android Police. If people want to follow you online, where can they do so?
I'm on Twitter at Corbin Davenport, and I'm on Mastodon and a couple other places. If you go to corbin.io, I have all the links there.
Right on, Corbin. Thanks for taking time to be with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and hope I'll get to come on more.
All right. We'll be in touch for sure. I need to have you on All About Android, so I'll sync up with you and bring you on. It'd be a lot of fun. Cool. Thanks again, Corbin. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much. Coming up, Netflix has a surprise for us all. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Monday.com, a team management platform that lets teams plan, manage, and track work in one centralized place. You can collaborate with your teammates and track everything your team is working on wherever you are in any industry. Whether you work with a team of 5 or 5,000, Monday.com is the easiest way to keep everyone connected and on track. With so many of your employees working from home, Monday.com is a project management platform that makes effective teamwork possible anywhere. You can keep all your team's work in one place by bringing your team together wherever you are. You can plan, track, and manage your business as usual in one easy-to-use platform. Plus, improve coordination across teams and departments by easily tracking and managing work so your team always knows who's doing what by when. Keep everyone connected under a single source of truth. There's centralized communication, so you're not going to need those annoying check-in meetings. There's remote-ready templates, so you can seamlessly get your team up to speed. And you can map everything out visually, however you choose to run projects such as Gantt charts, timelines, Kanban, or spreadsheet-like tables. Monday.com has you completely covered. This platform is totally customizable and adapts to your needs. Monday.com increases productivity and efficiency while facilitating transparency to improve collaboration. Those no-code automations it has lets you put your team's workflow on autopilot. Alerts, automatic status updates, and project flows will keep your team on track and confident in their work. You can integrate your team's go-to tools and connect their existing tools to get more work done. That means Zoom, Slack, email, calendar, spreadsheets, and so much more. Plus, you can make data-driven decisions by tracking progress and timelines and budgets to make key decisions based on real-time data rather than guesses. It is awesome. Monday.com has so much that you might be kind of lost at first. What all can I do? What do I want to do here? There are so many possibilities. Well, one way that we were helped was by having this gentleman named Eddie who came in and showed us how to create some templates that really rocked for planning shows, for making sure we had guests, all sorts of things. And once kind of the curtain was opened and we got to see how awesome Monday.com was, it really helped us kind of understand just how powerful this platform is. You can join more than 100,000 teams that are already getting things done with Monday.com. In fact, it even has onboarding specialists upon request, like Eddie, to help you get the most out of its platform. Change the way you work online. Let Monday.com take care of what slows you down and free up time to focus on the work that matters to you. To start your free 14-day trial, go to monday.com/twit. That's monday.com/twit. We thank Monday.com for its support of Tech News Weekly. All righty, folks, it is time for our stories of the week. And up first is my story of the week. This is a fascinating one. I think it's interesting the way that people's viewing habits have changed and the way that streaming platforms have altered themselves to serve the way that people enjoy media. So let's talk specifics. I can remember when, I think even on this show, and it may have been, I don't know, Jason, you may have been on, I may have talked to Ant about this, but I remember having a conversation on Tech News Weekly about a potential feature coming to Netflix that would let you watch content at 1.25, 1.5, 2x speed. And YouTube already does that. There are some other platforms out there where you can watch things at those sped up ways. A lot of podcast applications let you do that. And so people do like to listen to stuff at a faster speed. Depending on the book and the amount of voice work that the narrator does, I will sometimes speed up my audiobooks when I'm listening to them. And so I think that is a fascinating thing to sort of watch a show that may have, active choices for pacing and things like that in place, to have those be sped up. Well, now Netflix is adding a new feature that will add a shuffle play button to your home screen. So maybe you go on and you normally, are watching a series, and so you're binging that series, and then once that series is over, you're like, what do I watch next? Well, for some folks, there is a shuffle play button that is appearing that people are testing. And what it does is it lets you set up the ability to shuffle based on what people enjoy and what they watch. So after seeing this feature, TechCrunch reached out to Netflix, and Netflix responded. And this is a little bit from the TechCrunch article. The company tells TechCrunch the idea behind the feature is to help its members quickly and easily find content that's tailored to their tastes. This is a challenge Netflix has addressed over the years through a variety of features and tests, like screensavers, pre-roll videos, and promotional content. So what is going on is that it's two things here. One is that Netflix does a lot of pays a lot for content on its platform, so that its content library is always growing, and it wants you to watch that content, and so it needs a way to show you that content. But then it's also trying to replicate the experience of television. The only place that I ever experience television anymore is when I go to a hotel, which I have not done in a while, and you turn on the TV and you flip through the channels and you find something you want to watch, and it's just something that you happened upon. And Netflix is kind of trying to replicate that whole television idea of you channel surfing and coming across something interesting to watch. And so this randomize button is helpful in trying to make that happen. So I can imagine definitely coming across, a random episode of The Office and sitting and watching that, no problem. But I hope it doesn't do story-based shows, because I don't want to hop into a random episode of Warrior Nun on Netflix, because I wouldn't know what the heck was going on unless I had watched the episodes before.
Warrior Nun is a show that I'm not familiar with. I might actually watch that based on the name alone if I'm dropped into there.
Quite interesting. It is, yeah.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, it's. I think as I listened to you kind of walk through this and the comparison to kind of television, in the sense that TV used to be such the thing where you just turn it on and you kind of got what you got. And you had some choice, and that choice was to switch to a different channel that was also playing whatever they felt like, and hopefully you like that better than this. So you had a little bit of choice, but more or less you just kind of get what you get when you throw on the TV. Now we live in this world, in this age, where everything is on demand, where we have complete control to the entire experience in music and movies and all this stuff. And have we gotten so used to that it's hard to switch to the other thing? I know for myself, it would be really hard for me to trust. Like I might use that feature because I'm curious, but I would be really surprised if I used that feature and something came up and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll watch this. And I was able to allow myself to sit back. It would have to be really good at picking exactly the thing, because at this point I know what I'm in the mood for and I have the ability to find it. So it's kind of hard for me to go in the opposite direction,
Yeah, I'm not with this idea. For me, it's just I can't not be in control. So maybe I should talk to my therapist about that. But that's just the fact of the matter is I want to watch the things. So I've talked about this before. I have ADHD. And so with that, it is, if it's something I'm not interested in, if it's something that my brain is not interested in, then it is completely and utterly, it's almost a physical pain to have to sit through it. So I wouldn't want, and I don't like sitting anyway. So sitting down to watch Netflix, it has to be something that's engaging to me. Otherwise, I'm going to want to be up and, working on 10 different projects at once, or I don't know, doing the dishes, or anything that is actually engaging to me versus having to watch some random show that I wouldn't find engaging. So this definitely doesn't feel like it's my cup of tea, but I can also think of there have been a few times where, maybe I'm just tired and so I don't feel like doing anything else. And so my brain that normally would be bothered by having to sit around is going, I really wish I had something I could watch right now. And maybe hitting that shuffle button could come across something that I haven't seen. But yeah, I think, Jason, we're at a time now where, because we have been given the ability to choose on-demand content, it's very difficult to go back to not being able to choose on-demand content. And I can almost not imagine being able to just hit that shuffle button and trust that it's going to be something that I'd enjoy. So good that some people want it, but not for me.
It would be an exercise. Like, it would be an effort for me.
Yeah.
Like, I would have to go into it and actually say, I hereby swear to watch whatever comes up as the result of hitting this button. I would have to make that commitment to myself and then stick to it, which would be really hard because I guarantee you I'd hit that button, something would come up, no matter how compelling it might have been. Like maybe it's so compelling that I choose to watch it, but my guess is that it would come up and my instant thought is, oh yeah, this looks interesting, but there's got to be something that's like more what I want to watch right now, right? What is that something? I'm going to go find it. Like, I don't think that I could just put all my trust into it. It would be really hard for me to do that. So,
what have you got?
But hey, it'll work for somebody, and I think it's an interesting exercise. I'll be curious to see how long it lasts. My story of the week is about Facebook. Oh, Facebook. Facebook bought Oculus back in 2014. When it did that, when the company bought Oculus, it made a promise. Well, actually, Oculus founder Palmer Luckey made a promise at that time. He guaranteed that Oculus users would not need to log into Facebook on the headset in order to use it. Now, of course, it's been 6 years, which, let's be real, is an eternity in technology. And as such, times are changing. And boy, are they changing. Facebook made the announcement that starting October, new users will need to log into a Facebook account on Oculus hardware. So they're basically going back on that promise from 6 years ago. 6 years is a long time, so it's not like I didn't see it coming. Existing users, that would be myself, can stick with their Oculus accounts as the login for 2 more years. At that time, they'll be required to transition over to a Facebook account in order to use the hardware. And I've seen a lot of pushback from this online. This is one of those things that I swear at the time, everybody was like, yeah, right. How does a company as big as Facebook buy a company like Oculus, create a thriving ecosystem in VR, and not eventually do something like this? I think in my head, I knew it was a matter of when, not if. But I've enjoyed that I haven't needed it because I don't have a Facebook account. I really don't want one. However, I have the Oculus Quest and I actually really love it. So it's a catch-22 to be in. VR diehards have been loud and angry about this decision. Many of them saying, well, that's it. I'm moving on. You've got businesses that use these headsets for business reasons that, they're pissed because now they're going to have to require their staff or their clients to have a Facebook account in order to use them. Schools use this kind of hardware in order to do certain things. So how is that going to play with the school environment? Some interesting kind of aspects of this to consider. But I'm not at all surprised that Facebook did it. I just felt like it was going to happen at some point. It's just unfortunate that it is.
This bums me out. I figured it would happen too. I've been eyeballing the Oculus Quest for so long. It's not being a gamer. It is okay. Let me try to phrase this differently. If it was a smartphone style product or a tablet style product or something like that, if it was an Apple Watch kind of product, it exists within that part of me that is so interested in the thing that I would want to buy it immediately at the price that it costs. But it exists just outside of sort of my immediate passion and interest, that it is something that when I look at that price point, it's like, ugh, I still can't just do it because I don't know 100% if it's going to be something that I want to use all the time. I just want it to be something that I would want to use all the time. So I can't buy into VR yet, but I know if I'm going to buy into VR, Oculus Quest is the area that I would want to be in. I don't have any plans to get a PC and do that side of things. So Oculus Quest would be the perfect thing. So that's kind of is the start of it, because it is something that I think I will eventually end up getting. And to know that it has to be tied to this big gross company that in just so many ways continues to show how gross they are and is sort of unrelentingly gross and is unapologetically gross, that's what really bums me out. And I think looking at this, the other thing that becomes such a bummer about it is that it is an example of what happens when a company that you maybe like, or maybe even a company that you don't like, but is a smaller company acquired by a big company. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the founder of the small company says. Once it's bought by a big company, that big company eventually gets to make the decisions and choices that it chooses to make and doesn't necessarily honor that. So then I start to look at other devices and services that I'm a part of and go, how long until they also become, Instagram maybe made some promises in the beginning whenever it was acquired by Facebook and maybe is not holding up to those promises. I'm trying to think of, there are other products that I have that also fall into that boat where they've been acquired by some other company that's a lot bigger. And they say, don't worry, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And then those things end up happening. And that's what, for me, as someone who exists outside of the VR space, outside of, owning one of these Oculus devices, really looks at and says, this is the pattern. And it happens almost every time. And even though it was such a clear and present saying, absolutely, this is not going to happen, I'm making that promise. You can't always make that promise and have it be true. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and, time just ticks away and suddenly you find yourself 6 years later and, that promise suddenly will fade away eventually, kind of like you say, 6 years is a long time in technology. The forces change so quickly. At a certain point, Facebook has to do the math and say, well, are we going to upset some people? Yes, we're going to upset some really hardcore people who have been there from the beginning. But what do we stand to gain out of this move? And I think ultimately that's kind of what's really interesting about this. We've got Apple and their AR kind of glasses effort coming down the line. One could make the case that over the course of the next 5 years, social media and everything else, helped along in no small part by Facebook and its ties into Oculus, is going to move into the virtual space in a bigger way. This is going to enable that, to give Facebook the ability to compete with whatever Apple might have in its plans, because that'll be an interesting moment once that comes out. So, I think people hold these lines and hold these boundaries when it comes to something like this, but people also have short attention spans or short memory on this sort of stuff. If the hardware truly is great, which I feel like the Oculus Quest is, at a certain point, for right or for wrong, a lot of the people that are pissed or upset right now are probably going to end up using it anyways, because it just is the solution. There aren't a whole lot of standalone VR headsets right now that can go toe to toe with the Oculus Quest. It's excellent at that. And there's so much software support on it. There's just a number of reasons why it's great hardware. The black eye on it for a lot of people, I would say myself included, is that it has Facebook behind it. And at least before, I felt like there was a little bit of a wall between Facebook's ad mechanism and targeting and kind of the entrance into slurping up all of your data so that we can inform our ad metrics and all this stuff in ways that maybe I don't feel so comfortable with versus other people that might. At least there was a wall between that before. And now that wall is kind of coming down. And that's why I have a little bit of a reaction to it, to say, hey, well, I don't really want to have to do that. I hate to say it. I'm probably going to end up doing it.
Yeah.
No, but I probably will, because I enjoy the hardware and I will have to make that determination. Is the hardware and is the experience and is it being kind of like the premier device of its kind worth the trade-off that I have to make in handing over all of this information on how I use it and how I operate myself in a virtual world, and what does that lead to, and who the heck knows. But 2 to 5 years time, we're going to see a lot more of development in this space. And this is a decision that just makes sense. As much as as leaves a sour taste in my mouth, I understand why Facebook is doing it. And I also understand why people are very upset about it. So,
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of where we are. It's a both sort of situation where, I mean, and even when Palmer said this thing in the beginning, did we really believe that was the case? I mean, I always remained sort of skeptical of it because it's just not a thing that you can really guarantee. So if you sort of had that protective skepticism in place, then maybe this isn't such an issue. But at the end of the day, I still am just kind of disenchanted. I don't know. I'm sort of like about the idea that no matter what an individual founder says, you sell your company and you aren't necessarily 100% in control of it in the end.
Yeah, you might have all the best intentions, but it's going to go the way it makes the most sense for the greater being, that greater company. That's the way it goes. Seen it a million times.
You know what they say,
point, unfortunately.
The road to acquisition is paved with good intentions.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know if
there you go.
I say that.
Yes, they being you. And now all of you, because you subscribe to Tech News Weekly. We publish this show every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That is where you can go to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. All the links to the podcatchers, out to YouTube, all those links are there. twit.tv/TNW.
And you can follow us on social media. We are at Twit on Twitter, at twit.tv on Instagram, at Twit Talk on TikTok. I'm at Mikah Sargent on pretty much all of the social media networks. If you want to follow me there, you can. And of course, you should check out Hands on iOS. I have an episode coming out later today about Test Flight, which is Apple's internal method and app for installing betas from developers. So if you want to help test developers' apps before they are ready for the App Store and the wider launch and let them know bugs that you find and things like that, then Test Flight is your way to do so. And if you want to learn more about Test Flight and how to get that all set up, then check out my video later today. What about you, Jason?
Right on. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Jason Howell. Hands on Android, new episode published this morning, and it actually ties into a story from this show, Fortnite. Specifically, I wanted to do an episode about side loading of apps on Android. It is a big kind of strength of Android, is that you can, on your own, outside of the Google Play Store, load and install an app manually. You can do it easily. And in fact, Fortnite, that's how you do it right now, because it's not in the Play Store and they offer it through their website. So I use Fortnite as the example to illustrate how easy it is and what you need to consider when it comes to installing an app onto your phone manually by bypassing the official App Store of Google. That's the Google Play Store. So twit.tv/HOA, and you can check out that episode and learn a little something about installing apps on Android. Thanks to everyone who helps us do this show every week. John Ashley, of course, does so many things with this show and our other shows. So thank you, John. Thank you, Burke, who's there in the studio, putting out fires. Not really, but show-related fires, thankfully, only just those. And thanks to you for watching and listening. We'll see y'all next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, host at TWiT TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. It's my show, Hands on Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.